Some people live their entire lives unnoticed, walking in the shadows, holding secrets of strength that no one ever asks to see. One stormy night in Chicago, a janitor named David Miller found himself standing under the pouring rain, watching the CEO of his company, Claire Johnson, struggle alone by her car. What happened next was a moment so small, yet so powerful, it would set off a chain of events that neither of them could have imagined. That night, a single act of kindness became the spark that changed both of their lives forever. The rain had been relentless all evening, drumming against the windows of North Star Technologies, an advanced logistics firm known for its rigid corporate culture. Claire Johnson, the sharp and determined CEO, had stayed late preparing for a crucial investor meeting. By the time she stepped out, the storm had intensified, and the parking lot was nearly empty. Her sleek sedan stood at the far end, half hidden in the sheets of rain. As she hurried toward her car, her high heels slipped slightly on the slick pavement. She cursed under her breath, juggling her umbrella while fumbling with her keys. That's when she saw him, a tall, slightly hunched figure in a janitor's uniform, mopping the rainwater near the entrance. He looked up briefly, their eyes meeting for the first time. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, his voice low but filled with concern. Claire forced a polite smile. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied, though her car refused to start moments later. The engine sputtered uselessly, and she felt panic rise in her chest. Alone in the rain, she was caught in a rare moment of vulnerability. David approached carefully, not wanting to overstep. "Battery's dead," he guessed, glancing at the hood. Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Without a second thought," David said, "I've got jumper cables in my truck. If you don't mind waiting a minute, I'll get you going." Claire, who wasn't used to accepting help, felt an odd mix of gratitude and discomfort. "Thank you, I'd appreciate that." Moments later, he had his old pickup pulled next to her car, cables in hand. Despite the storm soaking both of them, David worked efficiently, his hands steady. Claire found herself watching him. This man she had likely passed by dozens of times in the hallways without ever noticing. As the car roared back to life, she looked at him with genuine appreciation. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly. He shrugged with a modest smile. "Sometimes we all need a little help." Claire offered him a ride home since the storm had worsened, but David politely declined, saying he lived nearby. Yet something in her told her this wasn't the last time their paths would cross in a meaningful way. The next morning, as she sat in her office, the memory of the previous night lingered. There had been something different about David. A quiet confidence, a sense of wisdom hidden beneath his humble exterior. She couldn't explain it, but she wanted to know more about the man who had appeared when she least expected it. Claire Johnson couldn't shake off the feeling that the man who had helped her in the rain wasn't just an ordinary janitor. Something about the way he had handled the situation, the calmness, the quiet intelligence in his eyes, stuck with her. As CEO, she prided herself on reading people well, yet David Miller was a mystery she wanted to solve. That week, she began noticing him more often during her late-night work sessions. While others had already left, David moved silently through the hallways, sweeping floors and emptying bins with deliberate precision. He always carried a battered clipboard tucked under his arm, scribbling notes in small, neat handwriting whenever he paused to observe something. One night, curiosity got the better of her. "David," she called softly as he was about to step into the supply closet. He turned, a bit startled, but offered a polite nod. "Yes, Ms. Johnson?" She smiled. "It's Claire after hours. What are you always writing on that clipboard?" David hesitated, as if debating whether to tell her. "Just notes," he replied, his tone modest. "Notes on what?" she pressed gently. He sighed, scratching the back of his neck. "On things I notice around here. Inefficiencies. Bottlenecks. Little stuff most people overlook." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You mean, like operational issues?" David nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Before this job, I was a logistics supervisor. Lost that job when the company downsized, so I took this one to support my family. But old habits die hard, I can't help noticing when things could run better." She stared at him, intrigued. "May I see?" He reluctantly handed over the clipboard. As Claire flipped through the pages, her jaw tightened in astonishment. His notes weren't random scribbles, they were detailed analyses of warehouse layouts, inventory errors, and transportation delays, complete with suggested solutions and cost-saving projections. It was the kind of report she paid consultants thousands to produce, and here it was, written by the janitor. "These are brilliant," she said quietly. David shifted uncomfortably. "Just observations. I didn't think anyone would care." "Well, I do," Claire replied firmly, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Over the following weeks, she started involving David in small discussions, asking his opinion on certain operational challenges. He spoke with clarity and precision, yet always with humility. Word spread quickly through the office, and not everyone was pleased. Bradley Cooper, the company's COO, saw this as a threat to the established hierarchy. One afternoon, he confronted Claire. "You're seriously taking advice from the janitor? What message does that send to our team?" Claire met his glare calmly. "It sends the message that good ideas can come from anyone, Brad." But rumors began to swirl. Some employees mocked David behind his back, whispering that he was trying to climb where he didn't belong. David, however, ignored the noise. He kept working quietly, both as a janitor and as an unacknowledged problem solver. The tension escalated one evening when Brad deliberately dismissed David's suggestion during a meeting, scoffing, "Leave the strategy to professionals." Claire noticed the hurt flicker across David's face, but he didn't respond. Instead, he went back to his notes, determined to prove his worth through actions rather than words. Days later, an unexpected crisis struck. A major shipping error threatened to delay a crucial client delivery, potentially costing the company millions. While the executives scrambled, David reviewed his notes and identified the root cause almost instantly. He presented a simple, actionable fix that prevented the disaster entirely. Claire stood before the board the next day and credited David for saving the deal. "Sometimes the best solutions come from the people closest to the problem," she said firmly, silencing any doubts. That night, as she walked out of the building, she found David cleaning the lobby. She stopped and smiled. "You just saved this company a fortune. I want you at tomorrow's operations meeting." David blinked, surprised. "Ma'am, I'm just—" "No, David," she interrupted softly. "You're not just anything. You have a gift, and it's time everyone sees it." For the first time in years, David felt seen, not as the janitor in the corner, but as a man with something valuable to offer. He went home that night to his son, feeling a glimmer of pride he thought he had lost long ago. The following week at North Star Technologies was unlike any other David Miller had experienced. For years, he had been invisible, moving silently through hallways no one noticed. Now, people stared. Some gave him curious glances. Others avoided his eyes altogether. Whispers trailed behind him like shadows. "He's just a janitor. What's he doing in executive meetings?" one employee muttered. "I heard Claire is giving him special treatment," another said, rolling her eyes. David ignored the gossip, though it gnawed at him. Every night he reminded himself why he was doing this, not for approval, but because he believed he could make a difference. Still, the walls of skepticism around him were high. Claire Johnson, on the other hand, seemed unwavering. She had reviewed his notes again and again, impressed by the depth of his insight. "He sees what we don't," she told her assistant one morning. "Sometimes it takes someone outside the system to truly understand it." Meanwhile, Brad Cooper grew increasingly hostile. In private conversations, he warned Claire, "You're undermining our leadership structure. If this backfires, it's on you." But Claire didn't back down. She had watched David prevent a costly disaster, and she trusted her instincts. She began inviting him to more meetings, asking him to explain his observations directly to the team. At first, the room would fall into awkward silence, but David spoke with a calm authority that slowly chipped away at their doubts. One evening, after a particularly tense session, Claire stopped him in the hallway. "You're doing well, David. Don't let the negativity get to you." He smiled faintly. "I've been through worse, ma'am. Losing my old job, my wife getting sick. Those were battles. This I can handle." The mention of his wife made Claire pause. She had sensed a quiet sadness in him but hadn't asked. "Your wife, is she okay?" David's eyes dimmed. "She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. I took the janitor job after that to keep food on the table for my son." Claire's chest tightened. She realized his strength came from pain, and the determination to keep moving forward despite it. Over time, David's suggestions began producing real results. Shipping delays dropped. Inventory errors nearly disappeared. Workers in the warehouse noticed that someone finally understood their struggles, and they started confiding in him. "You get it," one forklift driver told him. "You've been where we are." This grassroots support grew quietly, contrasting the resistance at the top. It was during this shift that David's relationship with Claire deepened, not romantically, but as two people who respected each other deeply. She admired his humility. He admired her courage to see beyond titles. But Brad wasn't done. He set out to sabotage David's credibility. He deliberately altered figures in a report to make one of David's recommendations look like a costly mistake. The error was caught just in time by Claire, who confronted Brad privately. "You're not just fighting David," she said coldly. "You're fighting progress." Brad backed down temporarily, but his resentment only grew. Meanwhile, David continued to work quietly at night, his son Ethan often waiting up for him at home. One night, Ethan asked, "Dad, why do you still clean floors if they're letting you into meetings now?" David chuckled softly. "Because, son, I started this job with a mop in my hand, and I'll keep using it until they officially ask me to do something else. No work is beneath me." Those words stuck with Ethan, planting seeds of resilience and humility that would shape him in ways he didn't yet understand. As the month went on, Claire decided it was time for David to formally present his findings to the entire company during the upcoming Operations Summit. It was a risky move, one that could either cement his place in the company or destroy his credibility entirely. When she told him, David felt a knot in his stomach. "I'm no public speaker," he admitted. Claire smiled. "You don't need to be. Just tell them what you know. Speak from your experience, David. That's more powerful than any polished speech." For the next few nights, David practiced quietly in the empty warehouse, going over his notes under the dim glow of the ceiling lights. Workers passing by offered encouragement, and for the first time, he felt like he wasn't fighting this battle alone. The night before the summit, he stood outside North Star's glass building, looking up at the sky. The city lights blurred against the dark clouds, and he whispered to himself, "For you, Mary," remembering his late wife. He wasn't just doing this for himself or the company, he was doing it for her memory and for the son who believed in him. The stage was set. Tomorrow would be the turning point. The day of the Operations Summit arrived like a storm building in the distance. Employees filled the auditorium, murmuring with curiosity and doubt. Few believed a janitor had anything valuable to say to an entire company. Yet, they came, eager to witness what many called the CEO's risky experiment. David Miller stood backstage, gripping his worn clipboard tightly. His heart pounded so loud it felt like the sound might carry through the walls. He had faced losses, hardships and sleepless nights, but this was different. One mistake and he'd confirm every whisper against him. Claire Johnson walked up to him, her presence calm and reassuring. "Nervous?" she asked softly. He chuckled under his breath. "Terrified." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good. It means you care. Just be yourself, David. That's all you need to do." Moments later, the lights dimmed, and Claire stepped onto the stage to introduce him. "Today," she began, her voice firm, "we're hearing from someone who sees this company through a lens most of us never consider. His insights have already saved us millions. Please welcome David Miller." The applause was scattered, hesitant. David walked onto the stage, his janitor's uniform still on. He had refused to wear anything else. Under the harsh spotlight, he felt the weight of hundreds of eyes. For a brief moment, his mind went blank. Then he thought of his late wife Mary, of Ethan waiting at home, and the workers who believed in him. Taking a deep breath, he spoke. "I'm not here to impress you with fancy slides or corporate jargon. I'm here to talk about what I see every night when I walk these halls." He began showing his handwritten charts and simple diagrams, explaining how small operational flaws, ignored for years, were draining the company's efficiency. He spoke of warehouse workers who felt unheard, of processes that could be improved with minor tweaks, of solutions that didn't cost millions but saved them. As he spoke, something shifted. The murmurs faded, replaced by silence, and then, gradually, nods of understanding. His voice grew stronger, his posture more confident. Every word was grounded in real experience, not theory. Brad Cooper sat in the front row, arms crossed, trying to maintain a mask of indifference. But even he couldn't deny the data staring back at him, numbers that were undeniable. David ended his presentation with a simple yet powerful statement: every person in this company matters. Every voice matters. Sometimes the solutions you're looking for aren't in the boardroom, they're on the floor, with the people who see the problems every day. Don't overlook them, because innovation doesn't care about titles. The room erupted in applause. This time it wasn't hesitant, it was genuine, loud, and long. Employees stood to their feet, clapping, some even cheering. David's eyes glistened as he stepped off the stage, overwhelmed by the support. Claire met him backstage with a proud smile. "You did it." "I didn't think they'd listen," he admitted, his voice cracking. "They didn't just listen, David," she said. "You inspired them." Word of the presentation spread quickly throughout the company. Workers who had once ignored him now greeted him with respect. Executives who doubted him were forced to acknowledge his value. Even Brad, though bitter, couldn't openly oppose him anymore. The next day, Claire officially offered David a role as an operations consultant. "This isn't charity," she told him. "You earned this." David hesitated at first. "What about my janitor job?" "You can leave it behind," she said gently. He shook his head with a faint smile. "Not yet. Let me finish my last week the way I started. I want Ethan to see that no matter how high you climb, you never forget where you came from." That night, David told his son about the new role. Ethan's eyes shone with pride. "You're amazing, Dad." David hugged him tightly, whispering, "No, son. I'm just someone who refused to give up." For the first time in years, David slept peacefully, knowing he had stepped into a new chapter of his life. But the road ahead wasn't without challenges. Office politics, jealousy, and resistance would test him again, but now he was ready. The janitor had become the man everyone was watching. The week following David Miller's groundbreaking presentation was a whirlwind of change. Employees greeted him with nods and smiles, the same people who once looked past him now stopping to shake his hand. Warehouse workers approached him with suggestions, eager to contribute to improvements. For the first time, David felt like he belonged not just as a worker, but as someone shaping the future of North Star Technologies. However, not everyone celebrated his rise. Brad Cooper, the COO, wore a mask of professionalism, but behind closed doors, his resentment grew darker. He had built his career on the belief that authority flowed only from titles, not talent. To see a janitor disrupting that order was intolerable. One morning, Brad entered Claire Johnson's office, his voice sharp. "You're making a mistake, Claire. He's unqualified, and eventually, this will blow up in your face." Claire didn't flinch. "You've seen the results, Brad. The numbers don't lie. Maybe it's time we stop underestimating people who don't fit into our traditional boxes." Brad smirked. "This isn't about numbers. It's about precedent. What happens when every employee thinks they can bypass the chain of command? You're setting chaos loose." Claire leaned forward, her tone calm but firm. "If recognizing talent is chaos, then maybe we need a little more of it." While corporate tension simmered, David quietly transitioned into his new consultant role. He spent his days in meetings, his nights still finishing janitorial duties until his final week ended. This humility impressed many, but also sparked further whispers, accusations of favoritism, envy from those who felt overlooked. One evening, as he reviewed operational reports at his desk, a young intern named Lisa hesitated at the doorway. "Mr. Miller?" she asked softly. David looked up and smiled warmly. "Just call me David. What's on your mind?" Lisa stepped closer, clutching a folder. "I've been working on some data analysis, but no one takes me seriously. I saw how you spoke up, and I was wondering if you could look at it." David opened the folder and immediately saw potential. Her analysis was sharp, innovative, and well supported. "This is excellent," he said. "You've got a good eye." Her face lit up. "You really think so?" "I know so," David said. "Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth. Keep working on this, and we'll bring it up at the next meeting." That moment reminded him why he was here, not just to improve processes, but to create opportunities for voices like Lisa's. Meanwhile, Claire prepared to roll out a new initiative, a program encouraging employees at all levels to submit improvement ideas directly to management. It was inspired by David's journey. When she announced it, many employees cheered, but Brad's glare from across the room was unmistakable. As weeks passed, David continued to uncover inefficiencies and propose changes that saved the company significant money. His recommendations improved morale too, as workers saw their suggestions implemented. Slowly, the culture of North Star began to shift. Yet the resistance from some executives hardened. In one board meeting, Brad publicly questioned David's latest plan to streamline supplier contracts. "Your numbers are optimistic," Brad said with a mocking edge. "Do you have any proof this will work outside of theory?" David stayed calm. "Yes," he replied, handing over documented results from a pilot project he had run quietly with one department. "These are real outcomes, not projections." The board members exchanged impressed looks. Brad's smirk faltered. Claire gave David an approving nod, silently telling him he had done well. That night, David returned home to Ethan, who proudly announced he had won a school science competition. "You inspired me, Dad," Ethan said. "You told me to keep working, even when no one's watching." David hugged his son tightly, his heart swelling with pride. "That's the spirit, Ethan. Never stop believing in yourself." But as much as progress shone, darkness still lurked. Brad was not done plotting. He began rallying allies, feeding them doubts about David's competence and Claire's leadership. He planned to use the next big challenge, a high-stakes logistics overhaul, as the moment to bring David down. Unaware of the storm brewing, David focused on mentoring Lisa and other employees, sharing his knowledge generously. Every day, he wrote new notes on his clipboard, determined to keep learning and helping others grow. For the first time since losing Mary, he felt his life had meaning again. The company was changing, yes, but so was he. The winds of change had swept through North Star Technologies, but not everyone welcomed them. While warehouse workers and junior staff rallied around David Miller's ideas, a quiet resistance was building in the upper ranks. Brad Cooper, whose pride had been wounded repeatedly, was determined to prove that David was nothing more than a lucky janitor who had stumbled into the spotlight. The perfect opportunity came when the company secured a massive contract with a national retailer, a deal requiring flawless coordination and an overhaul of the existing supply chain. Failure would not only cost millions but damage North Star's reputation permanently. Claire Johnson, confident in David's abilities, asked him to lead the optimization strategy. "Are you sure about this?" David asked when she gave him the assignment. Claire smiled. "I'm sure. You've saved us before. Now show everyone what you're truly capable of." Brad smirked when he heard the news. Behind the scenes, he whispered to his allies, "Watch this fall apart. When it does, Claire will have to admit her mistake." David immediately immersed himself in the challenge, spending late nights at the office, walking the warehouse floors, and speaking with everyone involved, from drivers to inventory clerks. His plan was simple yet revolutionary. Reorganize routes, renegotiate contracts with underperforming suppliers, and introduce a feedback system directly from the ground level to management. But obstacles soon appeared. Brad began quietly withholding crucial data, delaying approvals, and spreading doubts about the feasibility of David's plan. "It's too risky," he told the board. Miller's in over his head. Despite the sabotage, David pressed on, relying on his team, especially Lisa, the young intern whose confidence was growing under his mentorship. Together, they pieced together missing information and created backup plans for every scenario. One evening, as David reviewed reports in the warehouse, Lisa approached him nervously. "Brad's been asking around about your plan," she said. "He's trying to find a way to make it fail." David sighed. "I expected that. But we'll win with results, not arguments." The stress was heavy. At home, Ethan noticed his father's exhaustion. "Dad, are you okay?" David forced a tired smile. "Just a big project, son. But I'll be fine." "You always tell me to rest before big days," Ethan said. "You should listen to yourself too." Those words gave David a small moment of warmth amid the pressure. When the first phase of the new logistics rollout began, chaos hit almost immediately. Trucks were rerouted incorrectly, and a key supplier failed to deliver on time. Brad seized the moment, confronting Claire in the hallway. "I told you this would happen. He's in over his head." But Claire wasn't convinced. She had seen David prepare meticulously, and something about the failures felt orchestrated. She ordered a full review of communications, uncovering that someone had tampered with route instructions. The evidence pointed back to Brad's department. Before Claire could confront him, David had already stepped in. Using backup data he had safeguarded, he quickly recalibrated the routes, bypassing the tampered instructions. The new system kicked in, deliveries were made on time, and the contract was saved. At the next board meeting, David calmly presented proof of the sabotage alongside the success of his revised plan. Gasps filled the room as he laid out clear evidence. Brad's face turned pale. "I don't believe in pointing fingers," David said, his voice steady. "But I do believe in accountability. This company only thrives when we work together, not against each other." The board erupted in applause, but it wasn't the applause that mattered to David. It was the fact that the truth had come to light. Claire dismissed Brad shortly afterward, citing ethical violations. That night, the warehouse workers and junior staff threw a small celebration for David. They clapped him on the back, thanking him for standing up for the people who were often overlooked. Lisa raised a toast, "To the man who proved that greatness can come from anywhere." David smiled humbly. "Thank you, but this wasn't just me. This was all of us. Every person here had a hand in this success." Later, as he walked home under the quiet Chicago night sky, David felt something he hadn't in years: peace. He whispered to the stars, "Mary, I hope you're proud." The winds of change had not only survived, they had shattered the chains of doubt. The storm had passed, but its echoes remained. With Brad Cooper gone, North Star Technologies entered a new chapter, one shaped by resilience, honesty, and the belief that talent could rise from anywhere. David Miller's leadership during the crisis had cemented his place in the company, but he refused to let success change who he was. Rather than bask in recognition, David focused on what he had always done best: observing, listening, and finding solutions others overlooked. Yet now, instead of working silently in the shadows, he had a seat at the table and a voice that carried weight. Claire Johnson called him into her office one morning. "David, we're launching the new Ideas Without Titles program next week," she said, her tone excited. "It'll allow employees at every level to submit innovations directly to leadership. I want you to lead it." David raised an eyebrow. "Me? Why?" She smiled. "Because you're the reason it exists. You understand better than anyone what it feels like to be unheard. You'll make sure no good idea is ignored." He accepted, knowing this program could change lives the way his own had changed. The launch was met with enthusiasm. Workers who had long stayed silent began sharing their insights. Drivers suggested route improvements. Warehouse clerks proposed storage changes. Junior analysts presented cost-saving algorithms. For the first time, the company felt alive with ideas, buzzing with collaboration. David didn't just collect the suggestions, he mentored the employees behind them. He spent hours guiding Lisa, whose confidence blossomed as she refined her projects. He listened to drivers during lunch breaks, encouraged clerks in their efforts, and praised every contributor publicly. Lisa, now working full-time, told him one evening, "You've changed this company, David. People believe in themselves because you believed in them first." He smiled. That's all anyone needs, a chance to be heard. Meanwhile, at home, Ethan was thriving. The boy who had once seen his father only as a janitor now proudly told his friends that his dad was a consultant and a mentor. One night, as they shared dinner, Ethan said, "You know, Dad, you're teaching me something big." David chuckled. "Oh, what's that?" "That titles don't make someone important. What they do does." Those words filled David with quiet pride. Still, challenges came. Some executives still struggled to adjust to the new culture, clinging to old hierarchies. One senior manager even scoffed during a meeting, "We're wasting time listening to people who don't understand the bigger picture." David responded calmly, "Sometimes the bigger picture is only clear when you listen to the small details." His words silenced the room. Claire supported him fully, implementing policies to ensure every employee had access to leadership without fear of dismissal. Together, she and David worked side by side, transforming North Star into a place where voices carried, regardless of rank. Beyond the office, David began rebuilding parts of his personal life. He joined a community group, offering advice to young job seekers who had lost hope. He volunteered at Ethan's school, sharing his story during career day. Parents and students alike were moved by his journey from janitor to consultant. But even as his life filled with new purpose, there were moments of quiet reflection. Sometimes at night, he would sit by his window, looking at the city lights, missing Mary deeply. Yet instead of the heavy grief that once consumed him, he now felt her presence like a gentle whisper, guiding him forward. As the company thrived under its new culture, Claire noticed the change in David. "You're not just improving North Star," she said one afternoon. "You're inspiring everyone around you to see themselves differently." David shrugged modestly. "I'm just giving them what I wished someone had given me, belief." The mentorship program grew rapidly, with Lisa and several other young employees stepping into leadership roles. David encouraged them to mentor others, creating a ripple effect of empowerment. Toward the end of the quarter, North Star celebrated its highest performance in years. At the company gathering, Claire stood before the employees. "This success isn't because of one person," she said, "but because we learned to listen, to value every voice. And for that, we have David to thank." The room erupted in applause, but David raised his hand humbly. "This isn't just about me. It's about us. We're proof that when everyone is given a chance, extraordinary things happen." That night, walking home with Ethan by his side, David felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He wasn't just a man who had survived hardship, he was a man who had built something lasting, something bigger than himself. But one more challenge awaited, a test that would determine if this new culture could endure without him constantly fighting for it. Months passed, and North Star Technologies thrived like never before. The company had become a model for innovation and inclusivity, with its success drawing attention from industry leaders nationwide. Yet David Miller knew that true change wasn't measured by numbers alone, it was measured by whether it could survive without constant battles. He had seen too many good initiatives fade when leadership changed or when old habits crept back in. His greatest fear was that the culture he helped build might crumble if it depended solely on him. One crisp autumn morning, Claire Johnson called him into her office. "David, there's an offer I need to discuss with you," she began, sliding a document across the desk. "A global firm has taken notice of your work here. They want you to lead a new division focused on talent discovery and operational excellence." David stared at the paper, stunned. "That's huge," he said quietly. "It is. Claire agreed. But it also means leaving North Star. I won't pressure you. This is your choice. 4 days, David wrestled with the decision. The offer was tempting, but his heart was tied to the company that had given him a second chance. More importantly, he wondered if leaving would undo everything he had worked for. One evening, while watching Ethan do homework at the kitchen table, David voiced his thoughts. What if the company slips back into old ways without me there? Ethan looked up and said simply, then make sure it doesn't. Teach them how to keep it alive. Those words struck David like lightning. He realized that his role wasn't to hold North Star together forever, it was to make sure it could stand on its own. The next morning, he gathered Lisa, a few promising employees, and several warehouse leads who had become advocates for the new culture. I may not be here forever, he told them. But you will. This culture doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of you. Protect it. Grow it. Never let anyone make you feel small. Lisa's eyes filled with determination. We won't let it die, David. I promise. With that reassurance, David accepted the offer. But before leaving, he worked tirelessly for several weeks to ensure that systems, mentorship programs, and cultural safeguards were in place. He trained Lisa to step into a leadership role, empowering her to become a voice for the unheard just as he once was. On his last day, Claire hosted a farewell gathering in the same auditorium where he had once stood trembling during his first presentation. This time, the applause was deafening, not just for what he had done, but for what he had inspired. Claire took the stage first. David came to us as a janitor. He leaves us as a leader, a mentor, and a friend. More importantly, he leaves behind a company transformed, not because of his title, but because of his belief in people. When it was his turn to speak, David stepped up slowly, overwhelmed by the sea of faces looking back at him. When I first walked these halls, no one saw me. That's not a complaint, it's just how things were. But now, I see all of you, and you see each other. That's what matters. Titles will change, leaders will come and go, but if you keep believing in every voice, North Star will never lose its way. Tears glistened in many eyes as he ended with, "Thank you for letting me be part of this journey." After the event, he walked through the warehouse one last time, running his hand along the shelves where he had once mopped floors. Memories flooded back, his struggles, his late wife's voice encouraging him, the night he fixed Claire's car in the rain. He felt an ache in his chest, but it was a good ache, the kind that comes when something beautiful ends so something new can begin. As he left the building, Ethan waited outside, beaming with pride. Ready for the next adventure, Dad? David smiled. More than ever. He glanced back one final time at the company that had been both his battleground and his rebirth. The lights of North Star glowed warmly against the evening sky, a beacon of what was possible when people dared to see beyond the surface. Walking away, David knew he wasn't leaving a void, he was leaving a legacy. And somewhere deep in his heart, he felt Mary's presence, as if she were whispering, "You did it." With his son by his side and the future open before him, David Miller stepped forward, carrying with him the lesson that had changed his life. Greatness isn't about where you start, but about the courage to keep going.